G'day guys, welcome to AskWoodford episode 62. Guys, very excited to have my man Simon Thomas. He is from New Zealand. Sorry about his accent. I can't understand what he says sometimes, but he probably can't understand what I say. Correct me if I'm wrong, ST, you are the head of performance at the New Zealand Crusaders in the Super 15s Rugby Union. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, with Crusaders Rugby, Super Rugby.
Super Rugby. Now, ST.
The number of teams keeps changing. You can't keep up.
Oh, so it's not 15 teams in it.
No, mate, it started at 12, went to 15, went all the way up to 18. Mate, it's coming back down again. There'll probably be about 3 teams left by the end of the year.
Now, explain. Look, I want to get you on the show because we think very similar, very people first, data second, and use the art of being a coach. You're one of those guys I look towards. And I just love how you do things, very simplistic like me, communicate at a high level to get the results that you want. Talk about your career, where you've come from, and just generally about who you are as a person.
Yeah, so I started out in one of the small unions that feeds into the group that I'm working with now. So
Yeah.
I think probably that was the best place to start because we had no people, no money. The team had been kind of kicked out for financial reasons and then funded back in. So you had to be a generalist. You didn't have a whole bunch of tech. You didn't have a whole bunch of staff. You just had to roll your sleeves up and kind of get stuck into it and learn in the deep end. And I took that on. I was pretty young. Like half the team was older than me. I was 22 when I first started leading that program. So one half of the team was older than me, and the other half of my mates that I'd been socialised with for the last couple of years. So I had to draw that sort of line pretty quickly. I probably drew it too hard to start, and then kind of grew from learning on that side of things. But that was an awesome place to learn because it's relative now, sort of the post-COVID world where you've got less people and less money, and you just got to do more things. That having that kind of learning base rather than injecting straight into a high resource environment, you learn what's important.
I'm guessing you learned a lot more of the technical skills and the finer skills of communication and getting your message across. Where probably if you were in a program that was highly resourced, you wouldn't get the chance to do that and become that generalist. And probably because you did that, that was probably because you've been successful in your career so far. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it was just the best possible way to learn, where you didn't have a whole lot of resource, so you just had to make the most of the people in front of you.
Yeah.
Work sort of daily out of the coach's office rather than your own S&C office, which means you don't become a siloed performance coach. You become one that you have to integrate, you have to collaborate with your people and your coaches, and kind of understand that you're preparing footy players. You're not just trying to get points on the board in the gym, you're trying to get points on the board on Saturday. And so that way, and you have to run around and do a little bit of everything, so that now when you work in a role where you've got other staff there to help you, at least you can sort of understand what you want achieved in that space, but you can get out of their way and let them do it. But I can help pull the big picture together because I've had to do it all at one point. I'm not an expert in all the different areas, but at least I've got a bit of an understanding of them. So that was pretty useful because you just have to learn on the go, and you learn to build the plane as you're flying it. You end up you got no gear, so you buy half of it yourself just so you've got what you need to do your job and help people out and make the most out of it, and spend all your pay on professional development and go and seeing what other people do. So
and now they're all copying off you. Now they're trying to copy off you, so it's kind of like a 360.
Like I'm surrounded by good players at the moment, so we end up winning games, and everyone thinks that we've
Give yourself some credit, my friend. Give yourself some credit.
No, it's good. Like I say, we've got good people, but kind of know you do a good job with those people by getting to know them. So I'm happy to give myself credit. I know I do a good job of what I'm doing, but I could do a great job and we could lose games if we didn't have the other people there around us.
Correct. So 22 years old, running this. Now, this program is a feeder for Super 15s, correct?
Yeah, essentially, it's sort of our provincial comp, your national provincial comp that it's a stepping stone for players on the way to Super Rugby. It's kind of the next tier down. So if you're international, where you'll play for the All Blacks, the next tier down for us is Super Rugby, and there's 5 teams. And then the next tier down from that is your provincial comp, where there's 14 different sides, and the two don't overlap. When Super finishes, that provincial comp starts, and vice versa. So for players who if they make the All Blacks, they'll go from Super to the All Blacks, and they won't play that provincial comp, and so the young guys come through that competition.
So there's always development. That's what they're after, always development.
Yeah, like it's a massive strength for New Zealand rugby, I think, because it's player development, it's staff development. Like there's 14 people able to lead strength conditioning programs around the country rather than just 5. So you've actually got 14 plus 5 people leading programs. So and leading the academies as well. So it creates a really good broad base of people.
How did you go from, so from a 22 and you're in this provincial, you're the running the program of this provincial team. How did you get a job at the Crusaders? How did that occur? What was your experience early on from getting a position of, there's a lot of people watching this, a lot of young coaches might say, listen, one day I want to run a program. Just talk to me a little bit about how you got that job and just what kind of any tips you can give any new grad or anyone interested in becoming a performance manager like yourself.
Yeah, super proactive early. Like I guess I was fortunate. I knew what I wanted to do when I sort of entered my study, and I talked around where I wanted to get to. My mentor, who was delivering the course, she said, "Well, it's a bloody tough gig to crack into, but we'll do our best." And I so part of it, I was right place, right time.
What was her name? Give her a shout out. What was her name?
Claire Dellison runs the course. She's worked through basketball with the Tall Blacks, our national basketball team, with New Zealand Paralympics. Awesome mentor to have, and sort of gave first opportunity. She was a bit too busy to run a school program, so she handed it over to me, and that sort of gave me my first bit of hands-on stuff where you find out what from the textbook actually works in the real world and what doesn't. And then and look, that side, Tasman, sort of that's 4 hours up the road here from Christchurch, where we're based with Crusaders, and it's within the catchment for Crusaders. So Ash Jones was the head S&C coach at the Crusaders at the time.
Legend, absolute legend.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's still got a permanent sort of spot in our office just to drop in and out and talk shop whenever he wants, and he's bloody good.
He's incredible. He's the nicest guy. He, like yourself, very open. People are open. They're not insecure. They're just like, look, this is what we know. This is how we do things, and we're always looking to improve it and get everyone's view. But there's no insecurity. And what I got from you and your guys around in New Zealand when I was there was just how open you guys all are. And I think anyone who's living in New Zealand, if you're a young coach watching this, it's great to have people like ST. And also, I forgot his name, ST. Who was the other guy? He was a legend.
Was that Mark at the uni?
Mark was brilliant. Mark was brilliant. He's got so much, like yourself, so much experience, and you guys are just so open. Like, and and to have a guy like Ash Jones be able to come in must be fantastic, just to talk shop.
Yeah, I'd say he's operated in so many different programs around the world now. You can just pick his brain on anything. And it's great to see. He was always super open with information. It's where I learned to be open with information. You know that you're not cooking a secret sauce here. Like it's and so if you're hoarding your information and you're trying to hide things from people, that you're probably more just so there's a little bit of insecurity there. There's a bit of job protection there sometimes. You actually the competition's not won and lost by the little secrets that you're cooking up in your office, because they're all cut to suit the group that's in front of you anyway, so they don't copy paste to other places. So I flicked, like a lot of people have over the years, flicked Ash an email and said, look, I've just started studying, really keen to sort of come in and have a look and see what you're doing and just decide whether it is really where I want to go. And he flicked back, yep, here's my number, you're welcome to come in any time, just let me know and you can come and have a look and have a chat. So because we sort of part of that region, and my family was down here, when I was working in Tasman for most of the year, I'd just come down home for Christmas, and the first year I just went in and watched a Crusader pre-season and took notes and asked questions, and then the second year I watched and held a stopwatch and called out a few numbers, and then the third year sort of Ash sort of trusted me enough to take a couple of guys over and do a little bit of coaching here and there while I was around. So effectively sort of interning in a short stint really as a just self-driven really. And I knew I was trying to develop kids from 14 years old up there in Tasman to be Crusaders. So I needed to know what it took to be a Crusader, to work back the programming and the progression to kind of get them to where they needed to be. So a big part of it was trying to proactively build that alignment from where we were to where the players were going to get to. And then he said that was I was with Tasman for, I don't know, 8 years, 6 years, something like that. Before I then shifted down the road to take an assisting role with Crusaders and work with Canterbury, which is the other feeder team into Crusaders. The Canterbury and Tasman are pretty strong rivals, sort of a big brother, little brother thing going on there. And so that allowed me to kind of get in the door and actually be in the environment full time. So assisted within the Crusader program for 4 years, and then took the program over. And this is my fourth year leading the program now. Which has been great. So I've had an unusually linear path within the same system. I've followed the same kind of pathway that players do as they go through that system a little bit. So which doesn't happen often. Usually you've got to go and find an opportunity somewhere if you want to work in sport or create your own in the private space, because there's bugger all available in sport and it's volatile. So
I think, you know what, after meeting you, I think one of the reasons why it was linear for you, very easy to talk to. And I kind of noticed you're very good communication. I felt like that your ability to communicate with people is, you make a very good teacher. Do you know why, ST? It's because my old man's behind here. He's just behind here doing work. Hey, Jeff, what is it I don't have? You always say patience. He says I don't have much patience, but you, ST, you've got a lot of patience. And I think being a coach, sometimes you've got to have empathy and you've got to have a bit of patience. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning to have a little bit more patience, where when I met you, your patience, communication, very good. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why. I mean, normally, it's not a linear progression in our career. I mean, it's actually very hard to do what you've done from 22 all the way to, you're a young, how old are you now? Let's say young 30-year-old?
35 now.
35?
Yeah.
35, my friend. So, you're still young in the game, like myself.
Yeah.
35 still very young. How have you found, because I know you've done some work with the All Blacks, correct?
Yeah, because it's such an aligned system here, you can always drop in and out when the All Blacks are, when they are together in training. You can drop in and observe, and we work pretty closely with their S&C and medical staff, because effectively our team at Crusaders, we've got a large number of All Blacks. So you work with All Blacks for most of the year, and then they go and play for the All Blacks. So you have to stay pretty closely aligned to that program. The Māori All Blacks, which is sort of another one of our national teams, is a group that I work with on an annual basis at the moment. So essentially players will get selected for the All Blacks at the end of Super Rugby. And then if you don't make the All Blacks, but you're a quality player and you have Māori Indigenous heritage here in New Zealand, you can qualify to be selected for the Māori All Blacks, which is almost like your second side at the moment. And which is really interesting. We go to some pretty cool places. Part of that is leaving a cultural and a rugby footprint wherever you go. So you go to countries where rugby is not a strong sport. You go to Brazil and Chile, or sometimes you're in Japan, or sometimes you're in Russia, or wherever you go to try and leave an imprint for rugby and your culture there. And for some players, it's a development opportunity for guys that want to be All Blacks. And for others, it's just an opportunity to connect with their culture and play at a higher level. So that's sort of the group, the national team that I work with at the moment on an annual basis. And I've done our under-20s team in the past. So.
Yeah. And where do you see with your career, where do you see it going? I know it's a big question. You're still young, but where do you want to go? Because I know I've talked to you about this before, and this was pre-COVID. Where do you see yourself developing? Do you want to change sports? Do you want to see how it goes in rugby? What's your general vision with yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. I probably I got towards the end of last year, and like we've worked hard, but we've also been fortunate. We've been pretty successful. Sort of won the last 3 in a row, and we're chasing 4 before COVID kind of cancelled the season on us. Some mates in the background.
It's my mate in the back. I'm just going to shake his hand. Hey, mate, how you going, buddy? Good seeing you, champ. Good seeing you.
This is a podcast?
Yeah, it's a podcast. There you go. Head of the Crusaders, Super 15, Simon Thomas.
How good is Alex's mohawk and beard combo at the moment? Hey, how are you going?
Alex, ST.
What's up? Yeah, we
Yeah, man, yeah. So, ST, yeah.
Sorry, are you guys alive?
Yes, we're live. So, you're on the thing. Keep rolling. Good to see you. I'll talk to you soon, all right? See you. I love you, brother. Good to see you. Oh, get away.
Full respect for the sweatshirt tucked into the track pants. Combo.
He likes that. He likes that stuff. So, yeah, going on, what I was saying about yourself.
Where did we get to? What was I talking about?
Mate, I'm always interested in, especially someone like yourself. I track people's career. I've always been that way. Especially when I know somebody, I like them. I'm always like happy. I love to hear stories. Like, always interested to see what you're going to do, because I'd hope you'd come to Australia at one stage so we can hang out in Melbourne. The AFL Fish Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, I know you and I have talked about that before. That'd be something that I know you'd be interested in if you got the opportunity. But just where do you see yourself at the moment?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've sort of looked into and considered. At the moment with Crusaders, we've had the success, but a lot of experienced players have left, and a lot of young guys playing at the moment who I've worked with since they were about 15. So it's really exciting to see where we can help them get to and what they want to do in the next couple of years. But what I've probably found in the last couple of years, rather than the ambition of trying to climb, the role ladder and the team ladder within one sport, is you probably take a bit more joy and passion out of just working with the group. We get to take a journey in Super Rugby, like a full campaign. So and you get to see people grow and help them kind of develop and get to where their goals are. So I've probably found more enjoyment and more of my passion lies on the people side of things than the nuts and bolts side of things. So I've had really good people alongside me that can put a bit more detail into the strength program, for example, so I can sit back and just help people grow. But the opportunities to do that within rugby are relatively limited, because it's always it's a sort of a smaller organisation or a different season structure. So like the performance manager or your high performance manager or whatever, those sort of roles are more prevalent within an AFL and an NRL sort of a setup than in rugby. One where you can actually coordinate, strengthen and grow a group of people who are delivering. I'm not ready to just get stuck in an office, because I still like to deliver and coach and be in a team environment. I don't just want to be sort of floating around and getting stuck in the boardroom.
But I think that'd be your strength, is the ability to help others grow and to get the most out of individuals within your team, and then integrating with the entire program. I think that would suit you to a T, because that's the ability to communicate. It's such an art, and I don't know what you think of this, and I love your opinion, is coaching is an art and a science. But I don't know, these days these kids come out, and it's nothing against the graduates. I've been graduated 12 years now, and I feel like that it's just such a shift towards science. And I say these young graduates, I say, listen, that's great, you have that foundational knowledge, but it's the ability to communicate and to build relationships to get the most out of people. But I feel these days that's kind of a lost art. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it can be, and I think there's a real balance, because there's so many courses now. They're all kind of competing to pump out a whole lot of graduates into the space to go into sort of job search or setting things up. That I think the easiest thing to deliver is the textbook stuff, the science stuff, the data-driven stuff. Because otherwise you've got to get your hands on people to work with and coach. So I was really fortunate. The course that I did, the last couple of years of it was almost a 50-50 split of actual coaching and theory. So you didn't come out having just done all of the technical side of things, all the theory, and not actually coached anyone or put anything together. So I think a lot of the courses and the people that we get and give opportunities to come and grow in our environment, there's a really good flexibility in New Zealand in the courses that allows that for them to come in and get hours done, and we kind of make sure they get what they need, and they don't just sweep floors and fill drink bottles, but they write programs, they coach, they get to do things that are of value, and they're actually inside the rope of the team. They're not just coming in as minions. So I think I know that you get a limited opportunity to do that through some of the courses, so it's really important for us to actually be able to facilitate that if you get a chance to.
ST, what uni did you go to?
I was actually like a polytech, like an institute up in Nelson. Like, it was pretty small, but the degree was through AUT out of Auckland.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
I know that one. Yep.
The AUT degree, but delivered in Nelson, which meant it was perfect for me because I could sit in a class of 20 people instead of 200 people. And we could take things on tangents and actually discuss and talk ideas and come back to the topic rather than just sitting in a lecture theatre writing notes and studying the book. Which it just suited my learning style better. Which would be different for other people, but for me, that was a lot better for me. Plus, it was a nice, funny spot up in Nelson, and you're in a smaller space, and less people competing for the same job because it's a small town, and
small town, yeah. What? So okay. Would you? So in terms of that, the ideal role would be more oversee people management. What these days now, because of COVID, post-COVID, we talked off camera about how you had to, well, financially you had to cut some staff. Unfortunately, how's it changed since post-COVID? Because I've had a few guests on and asked them the same question, especially performance managers. How have you guys gone about simplifying your program, and how's it been post-COVID?
Yeah, as I said earlier, like we ran a relatively lean ship already. We certainly weren't over-resourced, but we're definitely less resourced now. So we've lost a couple of really good people in key roles. But sort of the two of us that are left out of the four that we had, or the 3.5.
Can you just tell everyone the four that you did have so everyone can understand it? So if yourself, the measure, like, just explain the roles.
Yeah, so myself as head of physical performance, and then Gareth Duda, who leads our strength and conditioning. So strength, power, speed, sort of detail. In the programming side of things. We had a dietitian 3 days a week who sort of bridged between us and our academy, our development structure, and a sports scientist, performance scientist full time, who sort of headed up all of our monitoring, our research and innovation sort of side of things. Who Sean Owen, the guy we had in that role, who's outstanding. Like, we just struck gold when we got him, because he understands people as well as data, as well as the game as well. So he actually really gets it. And our dietitian was awesome too. So we're sort of covering those spaces between the two of us a little bit now, but finding the balance where we don't run ourselves too thin. There's some things where we're chasing sort of 1%ers that you're not sure whether they'll operate or not. Now's not the time to chase that stuff. It's just getting the big rocks right first, and even leaning those down to see what we can actually achieve by cutting back all the different things that we're trying to do without compromising performance, but just being more efficient with our time. And it's a job for us to rebuild. We've been able to find out in probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of operating without these people, what we can live without and what we can't live without. And so now we can really start pushing and saying, look, we've tried to operate without this. Here's the stuff we need to reinvest and re-resource in that space. And like I said, I'm more people first. I'd rather have less bells and whistles and kit to get a person, because you've got to have someone to drive them anyway. 9 times out of 10, your tech backs up your gut feel, and it's just that one time out of 10 it throws something out. If you've got the right person to turn the numbers into a picture and help you make a good decision to improve or not miss something, it's that 1 time out of 10 we need to make sure doesn't slip through the cracks. But we don't need to be trying to chase 9 times out of 10 looking for things to fix. We just need to make sure we don't miss something. So it's different. It's going to be a learning process. It's like I said before, it's building the plane while you're flying it. But because we start playing this weekend, and I mean, we're fortunate our country, as it stands, touch wood, got zero cases of COVID. So with social distancing doesn't apply. Just wash your hands, be hygienic, and stay home if you're sick. We'll have the capacity to have full crowds at our games, which will help organisations stop the bleeding in terms of the loss of money.
Financial,
I mean, it's important to try and win this competition because we're bloody competitive, but getting it up and running has just been about saving jobs, making sure you don't lose more people by competition not getting off the ground. So look, it's been awesome that the NRL's been so aggressive because they've been able to go through a whole learning cycle slightly in advance of us, and we've been able to watch back and take note and kind of learn from them pushing ahead and being, you say, pretty bold, but also pretty brave. So when you're the first one out there, you take the hiding and you learn all the lessons.
Well, you're taking the risk, but at the same time, I mean, you have to risk it at some point because, especially what you said, it's going to stop the hemorrhaging, especially on the financial side. I like how you brought up, and this is something that's very important for young coaches. You know, you're an organisation that's a full-time organisation, it's a full professional sporting team, and you're here talking about, let's just nail the big rocks, the simple things really well. Train hard, recover well, adapt, then repeat. And it's getting those fundamentals right first before you bring in all the bells and whistles, the technical stuff. Just talk to me about, I remember you and I had a real good chat about, and I really liked it, and it lasted, it had a long lasting impression on me. You talked about how you do wellness questionnaires, but also you might do, just talk about your process when a player comes in and they might do some sort of wellness questionnaire, and you might have some sort of data driven, it might be, I don't know, it might be, I can't remember, it might be a cannon movement, jump, static jump, something like neuromuscular test. And then you integrate it with the subjective testing, and then it brings to you where you've got to communicate with the player. Just talk to me about your testing of the players, because a lot of students think it's all this technical science and we're using this up-to-date, brand new machine when it's quite simple. And just talk about your process behind that.
Yeah, I think what we've looked into in the past, the more you measure, the more you sort of, you're expecting the data to tell you what you might already be able to see anyway. And the more you actually measure and hang your hat on the numbers, whether it's a jump test or some kind of physical screen in the morning, you can get a whole bunch of false negatives or false positives. It tells you someone's flat and they PB that day, or it tells you someone's outstanding and they get injured. So it's not really going to tell you everything. So we're relatively informal in terms of the medical side of things, like that, the rolling window through with our medics around anything that's either overly sore, overly tight, and get a bit of a warrant fitness. We don't do. So we don't have a sit and reach or a needle wall or a groin squeeze or any kind of measurement unless we need it. If we know there's a pre-existing issue or there's something that we need to measure on that person based on something the day before, or they walk in and it's tight, so we measure it. We don't have a process that everybody has to do every day. The more you do, the more you're just trying to drive adherence and compliance instead of actually working with people. Our wellness is really simple. Twice a week, so it's first day in after the weekend and first day in after the day off in the middle of the week. But that's just a body weight and a score on fatigue, on physical soreness, and just on like overall health and sickness and wellness, and a sleep score. Because we just know that sleep's your key underpinning that we need to nail, that's critical. So but again, that'll just pop up. If that pops up a flag, that just prompts me to go and have a conversation and ask them, and depending on which that flag pops up, and I can either put them onto somebody to help or at least draw the information out of the person. What's going on, like what sore is, because sometimes they're like, oh no, I thought 3 was good, oh 3 bad, oh it's the other one then. So rather than drive it by the numbers and pull someone out of training without talking to them when they've got 1,000 lineouts to learn and they just click the wrong number. And getting them to, sometimes I know a player that comes in bouncing off the walls and they're usually really energetic and the music's up. If they walk in and sit down with their hoodie on and start eating their cereal and not talking to anybody, it's pretty clear that there's something off. I don't need a wellness to tell me that.
Test to tell you that.
And then it's just knowing your people well enough and building a good trusting relationship that they feel open to talk to you about something, and knowing that they're not going to hide something, or they're not going to underreport because they're not connecting it to selection. Because if it connects to selection, they're just going to say, I'm great, because they don't want to miss.
They're not going to be open about it.
Yeah, so it's more around, well, I'm here to help you, so you let me know if you need help, rather than I'm going to run to the coach and tell them that you're sore, so you're not going to get picked. Like if they see it that way, we're not going to get good information or good conversations. And it's just the person first approach, like it's person first and player second, and then athlete third. So for me, it's sort of, you need them to be actually a player for their sport on top, before being just a generic athlete as well. That box a little bit more in the development stages when they're in our academy, in terms of growing their general athletic ability. But they need to perform every week when they're with us. So we'll make sure we're improving their athletic ability, but it needs to be specific to what they're actually trying to do and perform and grow as a rugby player. But before that, if you don't get the person side right,
So ST, your season starts this weekend.
Yeah, restarts this weekend. Well,
so how many rounds do you guys play?
There's 5 teams will play each other twice and have a couple of byes, so we'll get 8 games, and they're all tough games when you're New Zealand team versus New Zealand teams, or respect to other teams in other countries. New Zealand teams go toe to toe, and
we're not very good.
Yeah. Oh, mate, these New Zealand teams just beat the shit out of each other every time they play. So you've got to be smart with your squad. You've got to be smart with your training, but you've got to do enough work to perform. If we just did recovery all year because we're trying to freshen up, we'd just get worse by the end of it. So you've got to keep people, you've got to push people right to the edge. But we do know that there's going to be pretty brutal, this comp. So but we're used to more of a marathon. Actually, the Northern Hemisphere season's more of a marathon. Super Rugby is probably more of a 1,500 metre type run, but this is going to be a bit more of a sprint. But probably more 400 metre type setup.
Can you explain to everyone? I didn't understand this, but you've got your area, New Zealand teams, Australian teams, and then South African teams. The question I had for you last time was, how do you deal with the recovery, the time zone difference when a team like New Zealand goes over to not Australia but to South Africa? How do you get them to contact? Do you go a week before? Is there any issues with it? What has worked best for you?
Yeah, well, when we go to South Africa, because the other 2 teams that have been in our competitions, one in Argentina, one in Japan, which expands it even more. So we're spread across so many different time zones. But when we go to South Africa, which we did every year, essentially you get there a week before. Like you might play in New Zealand on a Saturday night, and then you'll fly out. You'll be at the airport 4:00 in the morning after that, and get on the plane and sleep the flight, and you get to the other end as early as you can, and you just build your way through the week. You know that you're not going to sleep normally on Sunday night and Monday night, but as long as you're in a good routine by Friday, Saturday, you'll be okay. And you just build gradually through the week, and that's the way most New Zealand teams do it, because we get to fly back in time. You leave on Sunday, you fly for a day, you land on Sunday. So
it's true.
South African teams come in the other way, or when you come home, like you leave on Sunday, land on Tuesday. So it's a bit different. You just lose time. That's probably the harder week to manage. But we've got, our players, you do it every year. The All Blacks do it again when they play South Africa in the international. So if you've got someone who's played 5-6 seasons of Super and internationals, they've done it so many times, they've got good individual routine around it, which means that the young guys have got someone to follow, someone to talk to, someone to learn from, so they don't make the same mistakes and keep trying to reinvent the wheel around how you travel. It's definitely a lot simpler now. Like early on, when I was doing under 20s sides, and we played in South Africa, and I was probably a bit younger and a bit greener, and thought that a whole lot of extra detail would give a whole lot of extra benefit. You try to do everything under the sun around your time zone change and that sort of thing. But we're pretty lucky. We get a whole week to prepare. So as long as you get your sleep right on the way over, you eat at the right times, you're active at the right times during the day. When you're over there, by the time you get to the end of the week, if you do the simple things well, you're pretty good. Like you're good to go. And you actually play better because you're in a captured environment. The food's sorted, the pool's at the hotel, you're recovering better. The guys, their baby's not keeping them up all night, so they're actually sleeping. And so you almost do better on tour because it's a captured environment. And we only really have to tour for 1 or 2 weeks, which is an okay amount of time. Whereas South African teams tour is like 4 weeks away from their family or the church or wherever they're really strongly connected to at home.
Yeah,
that's a whole lot harder. It's like when guys go to a World Cup and they're away for 3 months. It's pretty new to them. So
I like how you said, do the simple things better. Just do the simple things better, low-hanging fruit. I think everyone wants to reinvent the wheel when it comes to let's more detail. But if you can just nail the basics, the big rocks, and do the simple things savagely well, I think it's going to work a lot better than if you go complex. And that's why when I first met you, I really enjoyed meeting somebody who's in professional sport who just talks about nailing the basics, nothing fancy. You're very much like me, very, what's the word for it? Simplistic mind frame, doing the simplistic things very, very well. But ST, I don't know if when you get students through, I think a lot of people think that if you're at professional sport, you have to be the bells and whistles, and you know more than me when the students come through. Do a lot of students still think that's like the latest and greatest, and they go in the gym and all we're hinging, we're squatting, we're pushing, we're pulling, and just doing and integrating with the sport?
Yeah, you certainly do a bit. It's always when you have your first checkpoint with your students who are in on their placement for the campaign. And even when you do your exit checkpoint, you just talk about what are the biggest things they got out of it, and from what they've seen, what can we do better based on their perspective and that sort of thing. And you always get the same. They're just like, they will always say, I couldn't believe how simple it was. I expected it to be way more complicated. So yeah, like you say, and we benefit from being a lower budget and lower resource sport in a way. I mean, having said that, there's sports that have a hell of a lot less money than we do. But we're certainly not, up there with some of the international sports that just throw heaps of cash at things and expect that to solve all problems. You just got to get people right and simple things right. But like I said, we're definitely fortunate compared to some other sports that get zero funding and really struggle with basketballs and some good international sports that just don't have the money that rugby does. But there's certainly more money in an AFL or an NRL or the NFL or some of the American sports and than there is in rugby. But it doesn't mean that you can't do things well. Like you're better off getting one thing right that gives you 20% than 5 things right that give you 1%.
Correct.
20% versus 5%. What wins? So
it's true though. Your relationship with the coach, is it Des, the coach, head coach?
Oh, we've got Razor here. Scott Robertson's our head coach.
Razor. No, Razor. I like how he's very extrovert. I like how he acts. What's your relationship with you got a good relationship with Razor? Yeah,
we worked together with Canterbury before. When I was working in the Canterbury role and assisting Crusaders, Razor was the head coach for Canterbury. So we'd worked together 4 years before we come into Crusaders, and we've done 4 years with Crusaders now. So sort of been, he built that working relationship and that trust over the last 8 years really, and figured each other out and know what each other needs to be successful. And he doesn't micromanage you, he just trusts you to do your job. But if you need something, you let him know, and he'll do what he can to make sure that you're supported in that. But like I say, he's himself, and he's really comfortable being himself, and so it creates an environment where all staff and all players can just be themselves and be the best of themselves. You don't have to fit a certain mold. You're a part of the group, and you add to our culture by being yourself and by bringing the best of yourself to the group, and that grows it. So he seems pretty out there when he's dancing after games, and he's really good at switching on and switching off. So he's like, when he needs to be intense and detailed, he is, and he's a bloody good analytical mind. And so he's not just a surfer out riding a wave and doing the same in at work. Like when he needs to be detailed and tough, he can be, but he can switch on, switch off really well. So it allows us to be able to do that environment. It's not too dry and too sterile.
He's obviously a very good coach though, because he obviously, was close to getting the All Blacks job. So he's a very good coach, obviously, as well.
Yeah, he is. I mean, we there are already some awesome foundations within our club, and then at the time, it just when Razor came in and we changed a couple of things within how we operate just to try and move us forward. And like I say, it's not like there was wholesale change or a secret recipe or anything. It was just a little bit of variation that, you know, he binds people together for a common cause, inspires, drives the big picture side of things really well.
Yeah.
It becomes, you get that little bit of extra percentage out of just winning hearts and minds and getting people to care deeply about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you say you can you can put the team before yourself without having to self-sacrifice to a great level where you actually, you know, some people have to. Some people can become resentful in an environment if you have to constantly put a team ahead of yourself to your own detriment. Whereas if you get that balance right, where you know, you're growing and investing in something and you're getting as much out of it because it's yours. That's what he's really good at creating. And he knows what his strengths are, and he knows that he surrounds himself with other people who have strengths that aren't his strengths. So. He's a big picture thinker. He'll say it himself. He's a great starter, but he's not a finisher. So he surrounds himself with the finishers.
Listen, he seems like a guy who just he brings people in. He's got that personality where people like to be around him. I think obviously he creates such an environment where he fosters just to be yourself, and I think that's the most important thing, where you can be yourself and you create that team culture of unity, which is so important. I think most people think coaches have to be rah-rah. Even our profession, people think that you've got to be rah-rah. But at the end of the day, you've got to create an environment that fosters change, but also fosters betterment and to be yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing out there is for any young coach, I'm thinking you'd say this as well, ST, is just be yourself. Don't ever try and be something that you think that your employer or the head coach or someone else wants to be.
Yeah. So that's the first step, and you can't really be a leader until you know yourself really deeply and know how you want to lead and how you want to grow in yourself. So that's a space that Ray's put a lot of time into, and asked and how he wants to kind of learn and grow in that space, and we sort of do the same. But he definitely creates an environment where you care about what you're doing, and you care about the people around you, and you care about leaving the place in a better space than when you got there. And so some of those foundations are already there, but one thing that he does well is we sort of rejig some of that to suit the current group. So we're not trying to run a model that worked for the Crusaders of 10 years ago. We run a model that works for the Crusaders of today, and that's even slightly different to how we were operating last year, because the dynamic of our group's changed. It's younger, so it takes more coaching, whereas it takes more coaching and less detail in some areas. And whereas sort of last year, when you're stacked with 100 game players and test match players and people that pick detail up really quickly, you can actually sort of manage the group and concentrate on the environment more because the players are so good. And not to say that the players this year aren't good; they're bloody awesome. They're going to be even better than the last ones. But it's just a matter of figuring out how do we adjust our environment and our culture to fit the group that we've got now and what their needs are, rather than going and seeing what another team does and trying to put that in place where we are. It doesn't really work. Like good teams and shit teams have the same stuff on the wall, but some people live it and some people don't. And some people live it, but the talent's not there to win games and titles until you get across the line. And some teams don't have the same level of talent, but they still win titles and trophies based on how they operate. So it's always pin the tail on the donkey to figure out where success comes from. But it's interesting. It's always a question that comes up when you work for a team like Crusaders, and people within rugby or other sports are sort of aware of the Crusaders, of the All Blacks, and how the environments work and the mystique around it. And they're always asking
the no dickheads policy. I'd be fucked. Yeah. The no dickheads policy. I'd be fucked, ST.
Everyone has a role. Everyone has a role. You just nail all the detail. You're just not allowed to talk.
All right, mate, I'm going to wrap it up there.
You can coach athletes. You're just not allowed to talk.
Yeah,
you're just not allowed to talk to the board.
Listen, yeah, my old man would be laughing at that, that's for sure. Look, ST, thank you for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it. Also, before I go, I want to appreciate you allowed me to come over last time. I had a fantastic time, and I know Alex, who was here, had a fantastic time. You know, he was blown away with how open all you guys were. Look, I'm a New Zealand fan now. Since I met you, Mark, and I've stayed in contact with some New Zealand students over there. So I think you're one of the guys who is really, and Alex can agree with me, leading the charge over there. So I think that any New Zealand coach, listen, he's the guy you want to reach out to. He's doing fantastic things. Listen, if they want to keep in contact, like in terms of seeing what you're doing, I know you got a Twitter. What's your Twitter link?
STSNC really is on Twitter. LinkedIn's the easiest for the professional stuff. Twitter, I follow 99%. I post bugger all, apart from the occasional sort of reshare of someone else's work, as we all do. So it's I read Twitter more than I post. I'm not really as active as some people in that space, but it's easy to get in touch for a DM through there or through LinkedIn or like I say, our environment's always apart from at the moment with all the health lockdown stuff, it's always an open environment for people to come in and sit down and looking at what we're doing and pick our brains and add to our evolution. So
fantastic. ST, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And guys, this has been episode 62 of Ask Woodford with the man, the head of performance at the New Zealand Crusaders Rugby Union, Simon Thomas. Thank you, Simon.
All good, brother. Cheers.